very, very, very excited to share with you Discovering Growth by Intertwining Poetry and Photography, Part 2, more poetry and photography with Mary Ellyn and Cheryl. It is going to be, you know what? It's going to be lovely, like just lovely. I am very excited and looking forward to sharing this next hour and a half with all y'all. There you go, Cheryl and Mary Ellyn.
Yeah, and
Thanks,
if
Beth.
anybody needs the workbook, it should be in the chat. So if you don't have that close at hand, you might want to download that again. And then I'm going to share screen. And all right, can everybody see that? Thumbs up if you can see.
Perfect.
Okay, so we're going to start. We're going to jump right in, aren't we, Cheryl?
Yes.
We're going to jump right in. And we're going to share one of, I think it's both of our favorite poems. Isn't it, Cheryl?
Yep. Yeah.
So, okay. So the cool thing about this for me is that this poem just reminded me of the table that my parents had. So what you see in front of you before I play the poem are pictures of me on my birthdays early on. And then the other thing that's interesting is my mom is next to me in one of the photos. And she is pregnant and did not tell anybody that she was having twins.
Hey, Mary Ellyn, just before you hit play, just everybody, if they want to follow along in the workbook, there is a link in the chat with the workbook link, and it's page 18. So I just wanted to point that out, where there's a poem where the Mary Ellyn has indicated where that is.
Oh, good.
In the workbook, if you want to follow along. So
yeah,
sorry
and so I'm going to show this. I'm going to show this one here. So this is the table over the years from 1954 until the present day in various locales. So I'm going to go back to this and then play this.
This poem
there
is Perhaps the World Ends Here, or the Kitchen Table poem. The world begins at a kitchen table. No matter what, we must eat to live. The gifts of earth are brought and prepared, set on the table. So it has been since creation, and it will go on. We chase chickens or dogs away from it. Babies teethe at the corners, they scrape their knees under it. It is here that children are given instructions on what it means to be human. We make men at it, we make women. At this table we gossip, recall enemies and the ghosts of lovers. Our dreams drink coffee with us as they put their arms around our children. They laugh with us at our poor, falling down selves, and as we put ourselves back together once again at the kitchen table. This table has been a house in the rain, an umbrella in the sun. Wars have begun and ended at this table. It is a place to hide in the shadow of terror, a place to celebrate the terrible victory. We have given birth on this table and have prepared our parents for burial here. At this table we sing with joy, with sorrow. We pray of suffering and remorse. We give thanks. Perhaps the world will end at the kitchen table while we are laughing and crying, eating of the last.
So hopefully you have a sense of Joe Harjo's poem. And, this is just one of the things that really struck me throughout my lifetime, the importance of a table. Not only this table, but my daughter's table that she has now. And my sister actually has my grandparents' table that's in her dining room. So just thinking of what's behind it. Cheryl, anything you want to add?
Well, and I was just going to say what we want to do today is kind of metaphorically create the table of sharing the poetry and the work that you guys have been working on. So we're around, think of yourself as gathered around this table and getting ready to share some of those works. And I noticed in the chat that some people actually had selected this poem as their poem, their inspiration, which is great. And I wanted to welcome those of you who were in the first session. I want to welcome you all back. And just to make sure, maybe a show of hands, if you were not in the first session, can you let us know? And I'm gonna take a moment and go through and see if just raise your hand if you weren't in the first session. And I will just, so okay, great. We have a couple folks, Mary Ellyn, who weren't in the first, so we should give them some options for this one. But most everybody was in the first session. To let you know.
Right, so this is just reminding what we're doing. So we're intertwining poems and photography. Both are very image-rich situations. And really it's a contemplative experience to read and let the images come to mind that are suggested by the poem, as well as to have images that spark poetry as well. And this is all about growth. So personal growth, growth of an idea, growth of a relationship, or any celebration of growth. And so what we're going to do today is share the poems and photos that was from the in-between time. And I'll share in a minute what can be done for those that are new to the session. And then we're going to experience an illustrated poem. I put performance. If we have time, we'll show the performance poem as well. But we really want to focus on that intertwining of poetry and photography. And then we're going to have fun. This is a very, very fun thing to do. So we're going to create a cento together in a larger group. And then after that, and after some sharing, then we'll have a closing, also centering on a poem about growth. So this was your in-between assignment. So I'm just going to review this. And Cheryl, feel free if I've missed anything. So you could either write your own version of Two Lives, either in a haiku format or in free verse, and then take some pictures that are suggested by that. Or you can find a poem in the workbook packet, which starts on page 11, or find something that really speaks to you. And we encourage some people, to buddy up because that makes it more meaningful and points different things out. And last time we shared with you the Lectio Divino method, the focused, one with each question. And so we encourage you to do that. So with that, Cheryl and I are going to share our versions of Two Lives. And I'm going to talk a little bit about what prompted the creation of my poem. So it was really interesting because I wrote this early on, like way before we had our first session, because it just all of a sudden dawned on me that earlier in my life, there were two Toms that I knew, and then the choices that I made. And so as I look at this photo in front of me right now, it's kind of like you have that main branch, but sometimes you can kind of veer off in different directions. And I think that's what part of the poem was all about. So I'm going to share with you my collage and then start reading the poem. So it's entitled Two Lives, Two Toms. In my other life, I'm sitting behind Tom, during high school English class. We are on the same school bus in the morning. And after leaving the bus, we slowly walk and talk our way to English class. I read the books. Tom didn't. We speculated what might be on the morning quiz. I prepped him with the answers. All of freshman year is like this. Tom and I together, me helping him. But in my life, I'm reading alone in my room. Another Tom is picking me up for a Friday night party. In my real life, I went to the private school. I won the scholarship for a free ride for 4 years of private high school. I'm with the rich kids. The other Tom picks me up because he has access to the brand new car. His parents live in a brand new house. He is an only child. We like to talk as we roam the streets in a hot car, taking the long way to the party. We talk about politics, the next new camera to buy, the next test we have to take. I am first in the class. He is second. We are always competing, but then we aren't. The other Tom's parents would love for us to spend the rest of our lives together. They mention it in their own way every time I am picked up by Tom or visit them before we party on a Friday evening. I guess you would call that parental approval, at least from his side of the family that lives on the good side of the tracks with a new car, new house, and never wanting for anything. In my other life, my Tom starts paying more attention to me. We are constantly together. My girlfriends stay away and give the two of us space. Space for the love language that we say with our eyes rather than our mouths. Love language that consumes us and causes us to get married as soon as we can and have babies as soon as we can. We are a Catholic family who went to a Catholic high school after attending a Catholic grade school. Our fathers also went to the same school, as did our aunts and uncles. We bought a house 2 blocks away, close to where my parents had their first home, close to the church so we can easily walk over and confess our sins. 4 kids in 6 years, always snot to clean, clothes to wash, beds to make, food to prepare twice a day. Thank goodness for the hot lunch program. 1 less meal for me to prepare. Our kids are grown now, out of the house, on their own usually. We talk about selling and moving into something smaller, but we like the neighborhood. It feels comfortable and homey. We like our neighbors. We went to school together. In my other life, the other Tom and I are childless. Something wrong with my innards. So the expensive docs took everything out having to do with my reproductive resources. Barren now. We thought about adopting, but the sight of young kids sends me into a panic. Tom understands. We travel the world months at a time. Tom's job takes him everywhere, and being childless, I can accompany him. I've seen the whole world. I've eaten great food. I've stayed at marvelous historical hotels. I've read great books, seen great movies, laughed a lot with my Tom. Until the day I see the other Tom, the Tom with his 4 kids. He's telling a story. They're looking at him, hanging on every word. It's in a park. I'm walking on a path. I stop for a minute. I sense a short sign of recognition, and then it's gone. The other Tom is gone. I wander into my childless house and wonder if I married the right Tom. Cheryl, would you like to read yours?
Sure. So, so in the same exercise, I also used the poem 2 Lives, but mine's a little different in that I, instead of 2 lives, I went 2 houses because I'm in the process of moving. And in that process, you end up kind of considering a lot of what ifs. two homes. In my other life, I live with my husband on a rickety farm in Vermont. He plants radishes and tramps through the woods with our two hounds, one old, one young. In summer, we move chairs to the little meadow by the creek that burbles in the spring and freezes in the winter. With grandchildren, I gather eggs and feed chickens table scraps, look for frogs and pick berries. On humid nights, we sit on a big wooden porch that protests under the weight of even the smallest feet. We watch fireflies and with low voices tell stories as heavy little heads fall asleep in our laps. Not once do I dream of the other coast, where I live in a broad valley with edges that lift to mountain ranges, where my walking group takes day trips to explore the hills around us. I jog on bright new streets embedded over a rich, fertile floor, nodding absently at neighbors walking dogs and pushing strollers. I read at the local coffee shop, interrupted by the soft splash of rain, plan a wine tour with old friends, and golf poorly at the homely little course down the street. My husband and I talk of travel, sometimes escaping to the city an hour north. There we see grown children and visit longtime friends. On weekends, I sip his brewed coffee on the covered deck. Today, thinking I'll work on my book, but I drift into dreaming of blueberries that I no longer have room to grow. So, intent to satiate my need to cultivate, I tend to two orchids, one large and one small. Then I feel the first fresh caress of fall. Pausing, I look east, wondering if this whisper crosses a continent, touching first another gardener, another life, far east of here. So in transitioning, what we'd like you guys to do is take a moment and share your images. We're going to break you up into groups and take your images and the poems that you worked on and share those in groups. And if you weren't in the first if you weren't in the first session, so you didn't have an opportunity to create a poem, then what we're going to ask you to do is perhaps look at some of the poems in the workbook and just one that appeals to you, just kind of just on a gut level, one that as you look through, maybe the title appeals to you or maybe a first line appeals to you, and pick that and read that and share that with the group, and maybe talk about the images that come to mind, and the group can help sort some of those images out and contribute images that come to mind for them when you read the poem. Mary Ellen, do you want to augment the next?
No, that's basically it at this point. So I'm going to stop sharing screen.
Are there questions?
Yeah, and just see if there's any questions first. Walt has a question. Unmute, Walt.
Is it okay to cry?
Yes, it's okay to cry.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And any other questions?
Okay.
So you're sharing your photos, if you have any, and then you're sharing your poem, and you have about 3 minutes each to share in the smaller group. And you should be able to share screen.
If you can't share screen, send up a back call. We'll figure it out. All right, breakout rooms now.
Yes, please.
Bye.
Bye, everybody.
Welcome back.
Did everybody have a chance to share then?
Yes.
And discuss things?
Good.
So we thought that we would share with the larger group, and anything that you feel comfortable sharing with the larger group. If you want to recite your poem, if you want to share your photos, this is just a chance to do this with the larger group. Anybody want to start?
I will.
Okay, Renee.
And I will preface this by saying I wasn't in your first session and I didn't even know or look at any of the pre-work, but I had written a poem from watching a snowfall. So I just shared a photo with the group of something taken in my yard.
Yep.
Oh, nice.
And my poem is called Free Fall. The snow dances in slow motion, softly, tenderly, silencing the doubt, erasing the worry, dissolving the fear. It cushions the blow, it soothes the soul when the world feels harsh and the heart frozen. With the thaw comes the tears, cleansing. Then the words, emancipating. Shame and blame shatter from radiant light. Guilt transforms into possibilities with unrestrained sight.
Thanks for sharing and being brave enough to share with everybody and not being part of the first session. So beautiful. Beautiful. Anybody else?
I will, Mary Ellen.
Okay, Deb and then Walt.
Walt, would you like to go first? Okay, my love. All right, let me just. In her other life, she lives past 39. She doesn't come from a scarcity mindset built upon the Great Depression, which cascades through the generations. She doesn't just manage well or get by. She thrives. In her other life, she is born into a situation full of love and abundance. Her creativity is not born of sharp necessity because her family isn't struggling in ways that narrow the focus to providing only the bare essentials, neglecting the true essentials for building confidence, connection, and a sense of ease. In her other life, she learns to ask for what she needs and gets it. And in doing so, she avoids the worst of life's pitfalls and lives a long life full of simple joys and towering service. She is known for her wit and humor, her willingness to jump in and help out, her inventive approach to making everything she touches that much more exceptional because her fingerprint is on it. She isn't just remembered fondly for these contributions because she is still here to provide them. In this other life, all that she has generated, contributed, put forth, returns to her, swirls around her. She witnesses in real time the accomplishments of her daughters, meets her sons-in-law, and delights in the antics of her 3 grandsons. In this other life, her presence is more than a white butterfly that occasionally drops in.
Thank you so much for sharing and not only the beauty of the poem, but also the images that fit so nicely. And so part of this is to see all different ways that you can use that intertwining of a poem and image. And what you put together today, you might think more about and then alter it a little bit. It might be the words of the poem, or it might be the photo or video that you show with it.
That was an amazing exercise, Mary Ellen. I really have to say thank you to you and Cheryl for the prompt and the examples that you gave us in session 1. It was kind of one of the best things that I've ever done at CPSI, to be honest.
Wow. Well, thanks for that. We're so passionate about this, and we just want you guys to use this, you know, and enrich your lives by doing this intersection of poetry and photography and thinking about and creating images with words and images with photos. So anything you want to add, Cheryl?
Well, no, just ditto what you said. And also it's nice to have, sometimes it's nice to have models. And what's nice about poetry, like with Two Lives or any poems that resonate with you, is to take that as a model to explore something. And, you know, just, especially if you're stuck on something, just find something that resonates with you, use that as a model, and then explore what you're stuck on through those models, like the kitchen table or like Two Lives. And it just, and that's just a way to explore that. And you can use photography in the same way. So. And did somebody else? Yeah.
Walt was going to share his.
Did you finish, Cheryl?
I did.
There you go.
So between the last session and this session, my wife died. And that first session helped me in my grieving by seeing what poetry and images can do. So here's my poem to my wife. Bloom fades, given her all to fellow humans. Spirit lives on. We know. Then I'll put the image up, one of the images. So this is one of the images. It's a photograph of a painting I did, which was one of her favorite paintings. And she loves artichokes. You know, we're from the coastal area of California where artichokes grow, and she has them every night. And this is a Proteus, which is not an artichoke, but it's in the same family. And often I would bring her some. But like all flowers, and I guess some other things, that's my point, the bloom fades. But the spirit, the interchange, the experience of the bloom never dies. It never goes away.
So thank you so much for having the courage to share that with all of us, Walt. And
my coach told me to do it. It wasn't my idea.
So who is the coach in this group?
Yes, that's me.
And sometimes that shows the importance of having a buddy. Somebody to share it with, somebody to share the pain with, and somebody to share what you're going through at that moment in time. So reaching out to somebody can sometimes be so important.
And I was very honored. Thank you. We talked a lot about this process of the poetry and the images, and just how incredibly, just how powerful it is. I don't have words to capture it. It was just a very soulful experience, just very, right, something about, well, writing and then poetry that is just so expressive, each word so meaningful, chosen so purposefully, and so evocative and healing at the same time, right? To be able to express that, and putting it with the images was just such a great way to explore. And also to explore, but also to then also pinpoint. For me, the image came first, kind of this recognition. I mean, I had chosen the poem, I loved the poem. I didn't have an idea, and then I saw something and it all just came together.
Yep. And I think that is one of the beauties of connecting images from poetry and photography, is because it allows you to see things differently. It allows you to experience things differently. It gives you a different sense of your emotions as well, a different perspective on your emotions. And so I think it does help a lot with healing, or helping you wherever you are. And so that's why it's so important that this is associated with growth.
Yeah.
You know, and sometimes we don't realize that healing really is a way to grow, but it is. It's a huge way to grow. May not feel that way at the time, but in hindsight, it can be. Cheryl, anything that you want to add?
No, I think it's been well stated.
And then opening it up to the group, anything that anybody wants to add at this point about the experience of poetry and photos, and basing it either on one of your favorite poems, or a poem that you created, a haiku that you created, etc.
Yeah. Hi. I like to just share that the experience of looking through photographs, I used a few of my own, and I used Unsplash. And I'm not very technological, but able to copy and paste into a Word document was great. And I interspersed the verses to go along with the images, so that and I used the kitchen table poem. So it was it worked well to have the images follow the verse, and did it that way.
Yeah, that's great. There's all sorts of different ways. I think I mentioned in the little video I did for the homework, explaining the homework, I started out with the image first, and then wrote my haikus. And the haikus just that form fits so nicely with what I was doing. And the inspiration was actually Mary Oliver's poem, Among the Trees, when I was out walking for a couple of days. And so you never know where that, where the inspiration can come from. But the beauty of the haiku is that it's in the present. It's short and in the present.
Mhm.
So, anything else before we move on to our next section? Okay, so I'm going to share screen and make sure I have everything here and move this over just a little bit. So now we're going to go into, Cheryl and I looked at two different things. We looked at performance poetry. So think of Amanda Gorman at the inauguration, and there's a lot of people that are doing performance poetry. But we also wanted a blending of images and poetry, as kind of similar to what Deb showed us. So this particular poem is using photos as well as words to talk through this. So let me get this going.
The dark side of the moon. To my dearest love, my brilliant sun. The world has decided we can no longer be one. So you take the day, and I'll take the night. You with your warm, happy glow. Me with my cold, lonely light. It must be this way, always and forever. They say we can no longer share the sky together. But my nights will follow your brilliant days. I am right behind you, and I will love you always. So do not be sad, my love. Please do not fret, for my reason to rise is in watching you set. So never forget that there once was a time when I truly was yours and you truly were mine. That there once was a moment when I felt your lips. If ever you miss me, remember our eclipse.
So the other thing that we noticed with this poem, not only do you have the images and the words, but you have some music in the background. And there's so what we're going to invite you to do is create your own performance to this poem. And so you can turn, you can leave your camera on or you can turn your camera off, but we're going to play the poem one more time. And we're going to invite you to stand up and just move to the movement of the poem as you're watching those images.
Okay, I'm going to start it right now. Oops.
The dark side of the moon. To my dearest love, my brilliant sun. The world has decided we can no longer be one. So you take the day, and I'll take the night. You with your warm, happy glow. Me with my cold, lonely light. It must be this way, always and forever. They say we can no longer share the sky together. But my nights will follow your brilliant days. am right behind you, and I will love you always. So do not be sad, my love. Please do not fret, for my reason to rise is in watching you set. So never forget that there once was a time when I truly was yours and you truly were mine. That there once was a moment when I felt your lips. If ever you miss me, remember our eclipse.
Any thoughts about adding adding music or adding movement and to poetry, to images as another modality of expression?
It just deepens the experience further.
Well, it seems like in this particular illustrated poem, it has so many different potential meanings, literal, figurative, and then just having the crescendos and decrescendos of the music add to that. So we just wanted to share with you another element of poetry, the combination of showing the lines, illustrating with pictures, and then having background music. Walt?
And so what I noticed is that, I thought when you invited us to stand up, that I would be making large gestures and movements and so on. And what I found, with my relationship to the cueing that the poem as a piece was doing, it was really kind of tiny movements. I would imagine if anybody were looking at me, they're saying he's not doing anything. But I was, and there's the music that's resonating and it's moving everything. And so I see that relationship, The tiny movements is what got me.
And I think so often when we think about having a soundtrack, the soundtrack is a pulsating, you're going into a store shopping type soundtrack. And that wasn't the case with this. This was a gentler, you could almost feel the movement of the sun or the moon in the sky. So it was complementary to what was going on with the words as well as the photos, or as well as the visuals.
And I will say that now you all know my situation. It was completely appropriate for me to be experiencing that poem.
Mm.
Yeah. So, any other thoughts? Is it okay if we move you to our next section then? Okay. So I'm going to share my screen again. And now we're going to create a different poetic form. We're going to create a cento. And essentially what we're doing is we're borrowing lines from other poets, and we're rearranging those lines in a new creative way. And so it's always really interesting to go through and create these. And there's some that I didn't even know were a cento, like The Wasteland by, T.S. Eliot. I didn't realize that that was a form of cento, that he was borrowing lines from other people. So to set this up, oh, Cheryl, did you want to say something?
I was just going to just a little bit of background, because I'm into that. But is that cento is actually it means patchwork. It comes from a Latin word that means patchwork, and so that's why you're using pieces of other poetry, lines of other poems, to make that patchwork garment, and you're making a patchwork poetry out of these other lines. And yeah. So we're going to ask you.
Oh, go ahead.
Go ahead, Mary Ellyn.
No, go for it, Cheryl.
So what we're going to ask you to do is look at a line from the poem that you shared, just one line, and we're going to ask you to share that. Before we do that, I think we're going to provide some examples of cento poems. So
yeah, so the example that I'm going to share with you is taken from young poets, high school students that went together for a climate speak poetry last year. So all of them created poems during this time, and then at the end created a cento. So one line per poet.
Home is a place of soil, of leaves and bark and branches.
Of our eyes, we noticed the fish whose lips touched death.
I woke up a second time, and when I did, it was almost like my room had been plastered with white paint.
I don't know how to start my life when my end has already been written.
We deserve to have only matters if the earth gets what it needs to survive.
All they have to do is act.
We must spread awareness among the youth of today with the goal of assuaging mother's anger.
If you say you don't miss her dancing, you are lying.
I should have known that you will always be deaf to what you don't want to hear.
I can't believe the denial has erased where my home base is. I'm faceless.
Did we take the wrong path?
We can let our stories intermingle.
Otherwise, I will be the means to your end.
Lest angry tides crash onto one more wasted day.
Coming routinely to return the waste from whence they came from. No longer do they want to be burdened by letting you in with open arms.
We have a choice to save Mother Nature or face her wrath.
So that, once again, is an example of a cento where each person took, it was a patchwork of one line from a poem, from the poems that they created, and then put it together. So what we're going to ask you to do is to choose one line from your poem that has some vivid imagery, and then write it down on using a marker on a sheet of paper that you can hold up to your camera. And we'll have you do that first before we go into breakouts. Anything you want to add, Cheryl?
No, just make. I think everybody does. I'm just checking through it. It helps to not have your background blurred when you're holding your line up, and it helps not to have additional background. So, but I think everybody's good. I went through the screens.
I'm writing it nice and big too. So I'm going to stop the share. Well, actually, I'm going to show, I think I need to show one more thing, don't I, Cheryl?
Yeah. So we can, just to discuss the mechanics of how this will work. We're going to put you into slightly larger breakouts than you were last time. And what will happen is you'll see everybody's line, And then what Mary Ellyn is going to show you is ways that you can actually compose your personal cento using the lines by moving things around on your screen. And if for some reason you're using a device that doesn't allow you to move the frames around, you can just write them out on a paper in the order that you want the lines to appear. So everybody's cento will be probably slightly different because you're going to be using the same lines, but you're going to be rearranging them in the way that best resonates with you. So
and so you'll have about 10 minutes to create your cento. So everybody needs to show theirs, and then you can be moving things around, and then 5 minutes, and then taking a picture of it, screenshot. So if you're on a Mac, it's Command-Shift-3. And if you're on an iPad, it's just the home screen. And then Cheryl, what is it on your device?
It's a alternate print screen. And that will capture your screen. And just if you want to practice right now, what you can do, I don't know if everybody's done this. This is a trick I learned from Beth, actually, is that to move a person's screen around, you just grab it in the corner and just move them around to a different place in what you see. So you should see a little hand, let you move the corner and move it around on your. So if you just want to practice that, you can move my frame to the bottom of the screen, and then you'll see how it fills in. So
I was able to, while we were doing that, I was able to move a lot of people around. And so what you're going to be doing is holding your line up, and then, so just move it around. And then once you kind of like how you've personally moved it, you take a screenshot of it. And if that's not working for you, then you're quickly writing things down. Okay. So with that, we're going to go into the breakouts, and I think they're going to be groups of about 5, right? Right, Beth?
There's a 4 and a 5.
4 and a 5.
But bye.
So
welcome back. Welcome back. So just real quickly, I was just curious, what images came to mind as you listen to other people's centos? If anybody wants to unmute and share. Is Liz talking?
Look, you're not getting silence because we don't have things to say.
Yeah.
We're just trying to be polite.
Yeah. So in our group, 3 people had virtually the same cento.
Oh,
so
interesting.
Yeah. And I was a 4th person with just 2 things reversed. So there was a flow. And I'm sorry, I don't remember exactly what the 5th was as far as what it was. Pretty much the same.
It was the same. Yeah. For 3 of us.
Mm-hmm.
But we also had an incredibly rich discussion in our group about the variations that you could do with this, but so much more importantly, how using this type of thing can give a voice to people, to individuals, to groups, to kids in schools that in so many ways are shut down or excluded or feel like they're less than.
Yeah, so interestingly enough, before we decided to do this, the New York Times Learning newsletter had a whole article about how teachers can use centos in schools to reinforce lessons.
Oh, very cool.
And taking lines, not from poetry in this case, but taking lines from the New York Times and putting it together. So there's all sorts of different applications of this. And we just wanted to share that with you, that patchwork approach, so that you just have another tool of expression.
And I see that we're getting a little short on time, so I'm wondering if one person from each of the two groups would share a cento. So if we could have a cento from each of the groups. So
I can share ours. So how many groups were there? 2?
There are just 2.
There were 2. So yeah, we very quickly came to the same agreement on what we would like to. So I'm trying to do 20 things at once, and that never works. So, okay. Can you see my screen?
It's coming, yes.
Okay.
Great.
So
we see it.
Okay, wars and unpleasantness have been plotted at this table. I start my journey. Awakening, it begins to stand, fragile, wobbly. It creates and extends and reaches. When I was a tree, I sang and danced with the wind and offered food and refuge to all who came.
Right.
So,
thank you.
And if my teammates want to, this is crazy how this just fit so well. Fern was inspired by the poem about the table. And so this, as we came to look at it, was like a journey. It was a journey, a healing journey. So at first we thought, well, we'll start it with I start. And then we started thinking, well, maybe it should start with the wars and the unpleasantness. And then with war, we had a lot of discussion about the healing as you're going to be fragile and wobbly, but, healing and surviving. And then as a tree, right? I've survived, sang and danced. This is the tree that survived 9/11. So we started talking about the survivor tree. There's another one at Oklahoma. And so, and then we realized that the tree is offering food and refuge, which came back to all of the imagery of the table. So it just was this, experience of full circle. It was just stunning the way poetry and images the process reveals. You don't go in, you go in obviously with an idea and you play with some things, but then the big reveal at the end that just, whoa, just really blew our socks off. So that was pretty cool.
Yeah, it's very cool. Thanks for sharing. And show of hands, who is a part of that group? Just raise your hand.
Drop off. So
yeah, we're past time a little bit. The other group, quickly, do you want to share your cento?
Deb, can you do?
Deb, are you able to do it?
Walter, you can do it? No.
I'll do it real quick since we're over time. And I saved it out of order on one screenshot, so I'm not going to share the screenshot of us holding them up, but this is how it goes. Stuck in my box due to convention. That much more exceptional because her fingerprint is on it. Bloom fades. With the thaw comes the tears, cleansing. And I am both of the earth and I am of the inexplicable beauty of heaven.
Thank you. Wow.
Very cool.
Wow.
Very cool. Thank you.
Wow.
So, get together with some friends,
Yeah.
and just see if you can co-create. I mean, that's the beauty of the cento. So, and the beauty of sharing poetry and images. So Cheryl, anything from your perspective?
No, except that I have an idea for Beth for next year for CPSI in real life and creating just this huge center right around the campus.
Oh, wow. Yeah.
Anyway, but thank you guys all for participating. This was just, it was wonderful to share this with you and have you part of it.
Unbelievable.
So if you can spend a couple more minutes, we have one last illustrated poem to share with you. If you can stay, understand if you have to take off.
Go.
Whoops, 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 whoops. It's coming, it's coming.
This morning I took a hike on a trail I once considered my stomping grounds when I was a kid, and the reality set in. I have the choice to decide whether any youth that I have left in me is going to be spent intelligently, or if I've already gone bankrupt. So, starting tomorrow, I'm making an investment. I'm opening a life savings account with myself where I will only deposit things that give me knowledge, liberation, and peace. Because I don't want to look back in 30 years and only remember spending my weekends in a sweaty room surrounded by strangers, seizure-inducing lights, and deafening music. Nor do I want to reminisce on getting through the week just so I can spend Friday night in someone's foggy garage. Above that, I certainly don't want the muscle memory of clicking on a social media app to be more imprinted in my mind than the memory of my sore muscles as I climb up a mountain. When I was little, I used to climb trees to get a clear view of the sunset as the pink sky faded to black. Moments later, the darkness would quickly light back up again by the glow of heaven poking through little holes in the sky that we call stars. They say hindsight vision is 20/20, but no one ever tells you that it's painful and awkward too. And I have concluded that the most painfully awkward mistake I can ever make is to dismiss the wisdom that my younger self wants me to know again. So here I am, 21 years old, sitting on the branch of a tree. I forgot how scary it is to look down, but how empowering it is that I'm doing it anyway. It feels like building resilience against the army in my own mind, or maybe I'm just training the soldiers to fight with me, not against me. That's what being young again feels like, where the only clouds I face aren't the ones inside my polluted factory of a mind, but the ones I see when I look up in the sky before I go to school. The fog that creeps over the hills in the morning is the closest moment of nostalgia I have that feels like home. Home is a place of safety, security, and love, and I think our homes get robbed as we grow up. But this morning, on this hike I've neglected to take for many years, I found my stolen belongings, and the rush of internal joy gave me something that no one can ever steal.
So we just wanted to share a different perspective on growth from somebody that's much younger, but thinking about growth. And so with that, we love that you were able to join us for a double session and participate with all of our exercises all in. Thank you, so much.
Cheryl, Mary Ellyn, this was everything. Yes, it was. I don't have words. It's a session about poetry and I don't have words.
Yeah.
I'm gonna steal
Everything
some.
about CPSI that is so meaningful. Just so, it's the punch of, whoa, I just never knew I could go there.
Yeah.
That CPSI just, it's a gift always. Thank you.
A great gift, and
yeah,
always in the moment that gives it additional meaning.